Welcome to my channel. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. My name is Mike, and I was married to a woman named Sarah for 10 years. I thought we had a pretty good life. Sure, we had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing prepared me for what happened one Wednesday evening. I got home from work, and Sarah was waiting for me at the kitchen table. When a spouse says we need to talk, it's usually not good news, right? She asked me to sit down, and as soon as I saw her face I knew something was wrong. There was a nervous energy in the air that made my stomach drop. "I need to tell you something, but you have to promise not to get mad," she started. I didn't say anything, just waited for her to continue. She took a deep breath and said, "Mike, you know I love you and I would never hurt you, but I want to be honest because it's important for our relationship." That made me feel uneasy, and then she dropped the big news, "I've met someone else, but I don't want to leave you. I just feel like I need more, something different, someone else sometimes. I want to take a lover." I sat there, stunned, barely able to believe what I was hearing. "Let me get this straight," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You love me, want to stay with me, but you also want to sleep with someone else on the side." She nodded, as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "It would be just a casual thing," she said. "I would never hide anything from you, and I'm sure it wouldn't affect our relationship. I still love you, Mike, but I need this. You'll understand." Now, let me tell you, I had no clue how she could possibly think this wouldn't mess up our marriage. "Have you already planned this out?" I asked, still trying to wrap my head around it. "Yes," she replied, "we were thinking about going away next weekend." That was the last straw. "Okay, Sarah," I said, "how would you feel if I told you I wanted to sleep with another woman? Would you be cool with that?" She hesitated for a moment, clearly caught off guard. "I think I would be okay with it as long as it didn't affect us." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "You know damn well you wouldn't be fine with it, Sarah," I snapped. "If the roles were switched, you'd be going crazy. You really thought I'd just accept this?" Her face dropped, and she muttered that she didn't expect me to be so angry. "I thought you loved me enough to let me do this," she said quietly. I replied, "Whatever you're smoking is illegal. Did you seriously think I'd be okay with you spending a weekend with another guy while I'm at home? Are you out of your mind?" She looked shocked. "I didn't think you'd say no." "Well, you didn't think this through at all, did you?" I stood up. "Give me a few days to think about it. We'll talk again on Sunday." With that, I went to our bedroom and started packing my things. I was moving into the guest room. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice shaking a little. "I don't want to sleep in the same bed with someone who cares more about another guy than about me," I told her flatly. Then I slammed the door. That night I barely slept, lying awake in the guest room, my mind racing. I knew one thing for sure: if she went through with this, our marriage was over. I couldn't live with that kind of betrayal. But I had a plan. The next morning, I left for work like usual without saying a word to her. I called my job and said I needed a few days off for personal reasons. They were understanding, so I spent the day putting my plan into action. I wasn't going to just sit back and let Sarah do whatever she wanted without knowing all the details. If she was serious about this, I needed to be prepared. First, I bought 3 voice-activated recorders. I placed one near the home phone, one in our bedroom, and the last one in her car. I also managed to get my hands on a phone tap recorder, which I hooked up to our landline. Then I headed to our cell phone provider since the account was under my name. It was easy enough to get access to Sarah's phone records. What I found was revealing, to say the least. When I got home, I cracked into her email accounts. There was one I didn't even know existed, but the password wasn't hard to figure out. What I found in there confirmed what I already suspected. She and her so-called lover, a guy named Tom, had been exchanging emails. And they were planning to go away together that very weekend. At least I found some relief in knowing they hadn't slept together yet. From there, I set up her email to forward any incoming messages directly to me, so I'd know what they were saying in real time. Finally, I picked up a couple of small GPS trackers. One went into her wallet, and the other got stashed in her car. By the end of the day, I had everything in place to track her every move. Now, it was just a matter of waiting. Friday came around, and I decided to take things a step further. I contacted a divorce lawyer, someone highly recommended by a friend. I laid everything out for him, the emails, the phone records, and my plans to gather more evidence. He was impressed and agreed that we could file for divorce on the grounds of adultery, as long as I had concrete proof. He also suggested that we sue Tom for alienation of affection, a legal action I hadn't even considered. All I needed now was hard evidence of the affair, and I was determined to get it. That evening, Sarah came home as usual, but I didn't say anything to her. When she started making dinner, I grabbed my keys and went to a bar. I wasn't in the mood for small talk or pretending everything was okay. I needed space to think and prepare for what was coming. Later that night when I got back, she tried to talk to me, but I wasn't interested in what she had to say. I walked past her without even looking at her and locked myself in the guest room. At this point, it was clear that the only way to save our marriage was for her to cancel her plans with Tom. But deep down, I knew that wasn't going to happen. I didn't want to engage in any conversation, didn't even want to look at her. By Sunday it was time to have that talk we'd scheduled. We sat down in the kitchen, just like we used to do when everything was normal. "Have you thought about what I said?" I asked, getting straight to the point. "I have," she said, her tone firm. "And I still want to go through with it." I felt my heart sink, but I kept my voice calm. "This will destroy our marriage. You can't seriously believe this won't change things between us." "I think you're overreacting," she said, crossing her arms. "If you looked at this from my point of view, maybe you'd understand." "I have looked at it from your side," I replied. "And I can't see how this ends well. So my answer is no." She sighed in frustration, clearly not expecting me to stick to my decision. "How can you be so selfish? If you loved me, you'd let me do this." "I'm the selfish one," I said, nearly laughing at the absurdity of it all. "You want to sleep with another man, but I'm selfish for saying no." "Come on, Sarah, that's ridiculous." There was a long pause before she asked, "What happens if I do it anyway?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Then there will be consequences. Serious consequences. We made vows when we got married. We promised to be faithful to each other. If you break that promise, we're done." She didn't say anything for a moment, just stared at me, and then quietly replied, "Well, I guess this conversation is over then." I got up from the table and walked out of the house. My mind was made up. There was no going back now. If she followed through with her plan, I was filing for divorce. By the time Thursday rolled around, I had everything in place for the weekend. The final straw came when I checked Sarah's emails again. She and Tom had made their plans. He booked a room at a nice hotel in Kansas City. They were going to meet on Friday afternoon and spend the weekend together. The way they talked, you'd think they were planning a fun trip instead of cheating. What upset me the most was how casual Sarah seemed. Like my feelings didn't matter at all. I decided to reserve the same hotel room they planned to use, but I booked it for Thursday night, the day before they were supposed to meet. My goal was simple. I wanted to set up cameras in the room to record everything. This was not just about ending my marriage. I wanted enough proof to sue Tom for interfering in our relationship. That afternoon, I took a day off work and drove to Kansas City. I checked into their hotel room and spent a couple of hours setting up everything. The fiber optic cameras were small and easy to hide, perfect for getting the footage I needed. I tested them all to make sure they were working properly. Once everything was in place, I headed home, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and grim satisfaction. Back at home, I made one last stop at a store and bought a small can of pepper spray. I had an idea for a little parting gift for Sarah and Tom. That night, Sarah acted like everything was normal, like she wasn't about to blow up our marriage the next day. It was almost impressive how calm she was. Meanwhile, I could barely stand to look at her. Friday morning arrived and I got up early. Sarah didn't know it, but I had already signed the divorce papers at my lawyer's office the previous day. All I needed now was the evidence, which I'd have by the end of the weekend. The plan was simple: serve her the divorce papers at her work on Monday, and make sure Tom got his as well. I checked Sarah's GPS tracker and saw she was at a salon, probably getting her hair done for her big weekend. While she was gone, I went through her suitcase. I found the new lingerie she had bought for Tom, something she'd never worn for me. It stung, but I had expected it. That's when I pulled out the pepper spray. I sprayed it directly on the crotch of her panties and the cups of her bra. I know it was petty, but after everything she put me through, I felt I deserved this small moment of satisfaction. Once I finished, I closed her suitcase and left it just like I found it. Then I went to the bank where I closed all our joint accounts and moved the money to a new account in my name. I also canceled all the credit cards that had both our names on them. After that, I headed home, ready to say my final goodbye. Around 12:30, I knew Sarah would be getting ready. I walked upstairs to her room and found her in front of the mirror, wearing the lingerie she bought for Tom. She looked up when I walked in. And for a moment there was an awkward silence. "You sure went all out for him, didn't you?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. She looked away, but I wasn't done. "Too bad you never made that much effort for me." "Mike, it's not like that," she said, her voice weak, as if she knew she'd lost any ground she might have had with me. "I just wanted to feel good, that's all." "You wanted to impress him," I shot back. "You're more worried about what he thinks than what I've thought for the last decade." She didn't respond, but I wasn't interested in hearing excuses anyway. I walked up to her, took her left hand in mine, and began slipping off her wedding ring. "This meant something to me," I said quietly, "but not to you. I don't want you wearing the ring I gave you when you're out there stroking someone else." She didn't resist, just stood there, watching as I slipped the engagement ring and wedding band into my pocket. "The engagement ring was my mother's," I added. "So I'll be keeping that." I let go of her hand and stepped back. "Look, Sarah, I won't be here when he picks you up. But let me make one thing clear, don't bring him into this house. If you do, there will be serious consequences. Do you understand?" She nodded, looking shocked. "I won't. I promise." "Good," I said, turning to leave. "I'll be watching." As I walked out, I heard her calling my name, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to hear anything else. I was done. I parked my car down the street, where I could keep an eye on the house without being seen. Part of me hoped she'd change her mind, but deep down I knew she wouldn't. This was who she was now. A couple of hours later, Tom's car pulled up. I watched as he walked to the door and rang the bell. Sarah came out with her suitcase in hand, and what did she do? She gave him a long, deep kiss right there on the front porch. Then she looked in my direction as if she knew I was watching and smiled. That smug smile was the last straw for me. I flipped her off as they drove away, and her smile disappeared. I drove straight to Kansas City, checked into my hotel room near theirs, and set up my laptop. By the time I had the cameras running, I saw them entering the room. They wasted no time getting undressed, and I could see Tom fumbling around in bed with her. It didn't take long to notice something that almost made me laugh. Tom wasn't exactly well endowed, if you catch my drift. Wasn't bringing much to the table. It was petty, I know, but watching the scene unfold gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. She had thrown away everything we had for this. What a lousy trade. Tom barely lasted a few minutes, and judging by the look on Sarah's face, she was far from satisfied. That was when I realized I'd made the right decision. She wasn't just hurting me, she was making a fool of herself. I couldn't watch their sad affair any longer, so I left the recording and went out for a drink. When I returned to the hotel later, they were already asleep. Sarah looked upset, and Tom seemed pretty pleased with himself. I didn't care anymore. I had the video I needed for the divorce. Everything else was just extra. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed for the first time in days. I grabbed some breakfast, picked up snacks, and checked that the recording was still going in their room. I wasn't just gathering evidence, I was enjoying every moment of their mess. Knowing that Sarah's weekend wasn't going as she planned made me feel a bit of justice. Around mid-morning, I called the local florist. Every year on our anniversary, I used to send her the same bouquet of flowers. But this year I had a different idea. I ordered that same bouquet and had it sent to their hotel room with a card. I didn't sign it because the flowers alone would annoy her. The timing was just right. They had gone out for a bit and returned just as the flowers arrived. I watched through the cameras as Sarah's face changed from surprise to discomfort the moment she saw them. She opened the card, and though I couldn't see what was written, I knew she immediately suspected me. Not long after, my phone rang. It was Sarah. "Hello." I answered, playing dumb. "Did you send me these flowers?" she asked, her voice tense. Why would I send you flowers, Sarah? You're with Tom. Did he forget to buy you some? They're just like the ones you always send me for our anniversary. I know you sent them. I let out a cold laugh. Well, first of all, you and your little boyfriend didn't tell me where you were, so I'd have no idea where to send flowers. Second, if I had sent you anything, it wouldn't have been flowers, it would have been poison ivy. Enjoy your weekend with Tom, Sarah. Don't call me again. Before she could say another word, I hung up. I could see her dialing my number again, but I didn't answer. She tossed the flowers into the trash, clearly upset by the reminder of what she was losing. That was just the start of my fun. Since I had their room number and their weekend was already falling apart, I decided to have some more fun. A little later they were back in bed and Tom was trying again. I thought it would be the perfect time to send a pizza to their room, Sarah's favorite. I called the hotel's usual delivery place and ordered it in her name. About 10 minutes into their time together, there was a knock on the door. The pizza delivery guy was there asking for payment. Tom, already annoyed by the interruption, had to deal with it. When he refused to pay, the delivery guy insisted that the room number and phone number matched, threatening to call the cops if he didn't pay. Tom eventually gave in and paid for the pizza, his mood clearly soured. They ended up eating it. Probably because they didn't want to waste it, but you could tell from the tension in the room that this wasn't how either of them had imagined their romantic weekend. Later, after they'd eaten and were trying to relax, I decided to hit them again. This time I called a sandwich shop and ordered Sarah's favorite sub to be delivered. By the time it arrived, Tom was once again on top of her, and the knock at the door sent him into a full-blown rage. Sarah, meanwhile, was starting to put the pieces together. He knows where we are, she said, her face pale as she looked at the sandwich. He's messing with us. Tom didn't want to believe it, but she explained how I'd hacked into her email and must have seen their plans. I couldn't help but smile as I watched her realization set in. She knew I was a step ahead, and she knew there was no way I was letting this weekend go smoothly. They decided to go out for a while, probably to get away from the string of deliveries. I stayed back, laughing to myself as I imagined their growing frustration. I knew this wasn't over yet. When they returned, they took a shower and got ready for their big romantic night out. Sarah pulled out her sexy lingerie, the same set I'd sprayed with pepper spray, and started to get dressed. She even did a little twirl for Tom, showing off her outfit. He was eager to get her back into bed, but she insisted they save it for after dinner. I sat back in my hotel room, watching the cameras and waiting for the pepper spray to do its work. It didn't take long. Less than an hour after they got back from their night out, Sarah ran to the bathroom, ripping off her clothes. When she came out, her skin was bright red and she looked like she was in serious pain. Her chest and groin were covered in red spots, and she was obviously uncomfortable. She tried to lie down, but every time Tom touched her, she snapped at him, saying it hurt too much. He looked confused and asked if she was allergic to something in the lingerie. Sarah had no idea what was happening, but the night was ruined. There was no way they could have any more romantic moments like that. I couldn't help but laugh. Karma had worked its magic. Sunday morning arrived and I knew the end was near. I packed up my things, satisfied with how the weekend had played out, and headed back home. Sarah and Tom were in for one last round of hell before everything blew up for good. When I got back, I made sure everything at the house was ready for her return. The locks had been changed, and I had packed up most of her belongings, placing them in garbage bags by the front door. She wouldn't be staying here any longer than necessary. Sarah came home. I was sitting on the couch watching a football game, pretending not to notice as she walked in. She looked at me with a strange mix of hope and nervousness. "I'm back," she announced like it was no big deal. I barely glanced at her. "Yeah, I see that," I replied, my voice as flat as I could make it. She walked between me and the TV, trying to catch my attention, and gave me a little smile. "Aren't you happy to see me?" I finally turned to look at her. "Happy?" I scoffed. "What on earth would make you think I'd be happy to see you? You think I got stupid over the weekend? I know exactly what you were doing." She looked surprised, as if she didn't think I would be so straightforward. "I didn't think it would bother you this much," she mumbled. "I thought you might just get past it." I shook my head, unable to believe what I was hearing. Sarah, I loved you completely, but the moment you left with that guy, it was over for me. You broke my heart, and now I don't care if you come back or not. Tears filled her eyes as she stepped closer. I know I made a huge mistake, she said, her voice shaking. But we can work through this, right? I'll do anything to make it up to you. I stood up and looked her in the eyes. Anything? I asked coldly. Then get on your knees and beg for my forgiveness. Maybe then I'll think about it. She hesitated, clearly not expecting that. I can't do that, she whispered. Exactly, I said, backing away. You won't even do that. So don't give me this I'll do anything crap. You made your bed, now lie in it. She tried again, her voice desperate. Please, Mike, I love you. I was thinking about you the whole way home. I want to be with you. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. You want to be with me now after what you did all weekend? Let me ask you something, did Tom use a condom every time? She looked shocked. No, but I can't get pregnant and he's married. He's clean, Mike. It wasn't like that. I shook my head in disgust. You don't know that. Do you think you're the only woman he said that to? As far as I'm concerned, you're damaged goods now. I'm not touching you until you get a full checkup. And even then I don't think I could ever be with you again. Her face fell. I know he's clean, Mike. But if you want, you can use a condom. I interrupted her, my anger rising again. Right. You expect me to use protection with my own wife, because you couldn't keep your legs closed with some loser? That's not happening. She tried one last time. I really want to make love to you tonight. I need you, Mike. Make love. I shook my head. You didn't make love to him. And there's no way I'm getting in bed with you after that. In fact, I don't even want to look at you tonight. You can sleep in the guest room. I'll take the master bedroom, seeing as I didn't do anything wrong. Her face fell, but she didn't argue. She knew she had lost this battle. Can we at least talk about it? She asked, her voice small. We can talk tomorrow after you get back from work, I said, heading for the door. But I'm not sure what else there is to say. I left the house and headed to a nearby bar, just to clear my head. I wasn't interested in drinking, I just needed to be away from her. The truth was I had already made up my mind. This marriage was dead, and no amount of begging or talking was going to change that. When I got back home later that night, I found her lying in our bed. Get out, I said firmly. You don't belong here anymore. This is our bed, she argued, but her voice lacked conviction. I have just as much right to it as you. You gave up that right the moment you walked out with him, I shot back. Either get out or I'll drag you out myself. She started crying, but she got up and left the room. I closed and locked the door behind her, ignoring her sobs as she walked down the hallway. It didn't matter anymore. Nothing she could say or do would fix what she had broken. The next morning, I barely acknowledged her as she got ready for work. She looked at me with tearful eyes and said, I love you, Mike. I just gave her a cold, indifferent look. I used to love you too, I replied, emphasizing the past tense. The tears started to flow again as she turned and left the house. As soon as she was gone, I began packing the rest of her things into garbage bags. It was time for her to be out of my life for good. After Sarah left for work that morning, I got down to business. I packed all her remaining belongings into garbage bags and placed them by the front door. Every item felt like I was getting rid of a piece of the past. A life I could no longer recognize. Once everything was ready, I made a call I'd been waiting to make. I reached out to Tom's wife, Jenny. She picked up the phone, clearly surprised to hear from me. Hey, Jenny. This is Mike, Sarah's husband, I said, my voice calm but direct. Do you know where Tom was this past weekend? Jenny hesitated, her voice uncertain. He told me he was on a business trip. Why? I took a deep breath. He wasn't on a business trip. He spent the weekend with my wife, Sarah. I've got all the proof you need, emails, texts, everything. I'm willing to share it with you if you want to know the truth. There was silence on the other end of the line, and then I heard her voice crack. Do you have proof? She asked. Yes, I said firmly. I can send it to you. Or we can meet up and I'll show you everything. To my surprise, Jenny agreed. We arranged to meet later that afternoon. When I arrived at her house, I was taken aback. Jenny was stunning, tall, blonde, and beautiful. It made me wonder how Tom could be so foolish. I could tell she was surprised to see me too, but we didn't talk about it. There was too much to discuss. I laid everything out for her. Emails between Tom and Sarah, phone records, the video evidence I had gathered over the weekend. She was furious, but she held it together. We talked for a while, and by the end of it, Jenny decided to hire my divorce lawyer to handle her case too. The lawyer agreed to take both of our cases, and even offered a discount for handling them together. As we left the office, Jenny thanked me for telling her the truth. "I can't believe this is happening," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "I know," I replied. "But we'll get through it. We deserve better than this." We said our goodbyes and I returned home, ready for what came next. It wasn't long before my phone rang. It was Sarah and she sounded panicked. "What the hell is going on, Mike?" she yelled. "I just got served with divorce papers at work. And Tom got papers too, he's being sued for something. What the hell is this?" I didn't pretend to be sympathetic. "It's exactly what I said would happen if you went through with your weekend plans. There are consequences, Sarah. Did you really think there wouldn't be any?" "I didn't think you'd actually do this," she said quietly, sounding defeated. "Well, you were wrong. If you want to talk more, we can discuss it when you get back to the house. I'm done with this conversation for now." I hung up the phone before she could say anything else. Then I went outside, grabbed the garbage bags full of her stuff, and tossed them into the front yard. I was done being nice. She had made her choices and now she'd have to live with them. When Sarah pulled into the driveway later that day, she stormed out of the car, her face red with rage. She started screaming at me the moment she saw her things scattered across the lawn. "How could you do this to me?" she shrieked, spit flying as she raged at me. "You're ruining everything." I stood there calm and collected, watching her unravel. "I didn't ruin anything, Sarah. You did that all on your own when you chose him over me. You're the one who destroyed our marriage." She was sobbing now, her words barely coherent as she kept yelling. "I thought you loved me." "I did love you," I said quietly. "I loved you more than anything. But you didn't love me. If you had, you wouldn't have done what you did. You threw us away." Her tears kept flowing, but I was done. "You need to leave now. Take your things and go. You've lost the right to be here." She didn't argue, she knew it was over. She gathered her stuff, crying as she put it into her car. Before she left, I handed her one last thing, the wedding ring I had taken from her. I had flattened it, turning it into scrap metal. "Here," I said, dropping the ring into her hand. "It's worthless now, just like our marriage. Maybe you can pawn it." I leaned in and kissed her gently on the forehead, the last time I would ever touch her. "Goodbye, Sarah," I whispered, and then I turned and walked back into the house without looking back. For the next hour I sat in my empty home, tears streaming down my face as I let out all the pain and anger I'd been holding in. I cried until I had nothing left, and then I stood up, wiped my face and made a choice. I wasn't going to let this break me. I had three options: drown myself in alcohol, do something reckless and end it all, or move on with my life, knowing that I hadn't done anything wrong. The answer was clear. I wasn't going to let Sarah or Tom destroy me. I hadn't done anything wrong and I knew I deserved better. That evening I called Jenny. We had already connected over the mess we were both dealing with, so I thought dinner wouldn't hurt. She agreed, and after we hung up I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Maybe we just stay friends, or maybe it could become something more. Either way, I knew I was moving on. As I sat there thinking about everything that happened, a small smile appeared on my face. Sarah may have broken my heart, but she didn't break me. I was free. Second story: I never thought I would be cheated on. I'm a 25-year-old woman and my partner also 25, and I have 2 kids together. We've been together for 5 years and he's my first and only boyfriend. Recently, I found out he has been flirting with a female coworker. I discovered this by accident when he acted strangely when I touched his phone. I had a feeling something was wrong for weeks, and when I tried to talk to him about it, he insisted he wasn't doing anything wrong. His strange reaction made me suspect more, so I started asking questions. After we fought about it, I reached out to her and her story matched his. She said he was the one trying to start a relationship, while she was just ignoring it. He claimed he was just looking for comfort because we had been arguing over small things. I try to forgive him since it seems like it was just those posts, but the hurt is overwhelming. Every time I look at him, my heart breaks, and I can't stop thinking about how he could do this to me. We've always been very close. I see him not just as a partner but also as my best friend. He has supported me a lot during our time together. Now, I don't know where to go from here. Leaving him breaks my heart, but living with him and feeling insecure is hurting me every day. I would really appreciate any unbiased advice.